Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76 Sports. First of all, please, if you see fit, please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. If you want to make a donation, that information is below in the description box. And you can also leave a super thanks. And also, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. I am on location in Big D in Dallas, and I'm not wearing my usual Big Discussions 76 Sports attire. No Michigan football t-shirt, no Buffalo Bills, no Buffalo Braves. I just finished an interview with a gentleman named Timothy Newsome, who is the founder and Chief Technology Officer of Newtec Business Solutions. And part of our discussion involved his college football playing days at Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina, and also his professional playing days for the Dallas Cowboys under the legendary head coach Tom Landry. So what you're about to see is the portion of that interview where Timothy and I talked about his football career at the college level and then at the NFL level. I thought that would be appropriate for this channel, as this is my sports channel. So I hope you all learn something, and I hope you all enjoy it. Please leave any comments below. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Once that snippet is over, I'm going to cut right to the credentials slide. So once again, if you see fit, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to donate something to the channel, that information is below in the description box. Also, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I'm also a writer. And as always, how about them Cowboys? And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about your sports and athletics history. Describe your start as an athlete. Before, I know you focused on football at Winston-Salem State, but it sounds like you were a multi-sport athlete before then. Like, when did you start playing sports, and when did you start?
Well, my first entry into organized sports was baseball in the fourth grade. Mm-hmm. And so during the summer months, I would participate in Little League Baseball. And it wasn't until my seventh grade year that I started participating in football and in basketball. Now, participating is a very loosely phrase that I use because I really wasn't playing very much. I was sitting the bench a lot. Mm-hmm. I really didn't start actually getting on the field until my junior year in high school, and then I was a defensive back. So I was not a great football player, I don't think, throughout my high school career. I was average, but I just wasn't great at it. But when I got to Winston-Salem State, Coach Hayes thought it would be better for me to move from defense to offense, a position that I really didn't play that well in high school. And I kind of questioned his judgment a little, but I accepted it, and I could, begin to excel at it.
Do you remember what his rationale was for moving you?
Sure.
Running back?
Yeah. His thought process was, and it was a correct one, he said, I've got some outstanding football players on defense. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't need any more. He said, but I do need someone who can run. He said, if you can run, I can use you. He said, but I do not need any more defensive players. And that was his rationale. He didn't really know if I could run or not, but he just thought that it would be a position for me to try and see if I could excel at it. Okay.
Was there a large learning curve there? Because, I mean, I never played football, but I know that, the quarterback hands you the ball and you're following the blockers, trying to make the guy miss, or in some instances running the guy over. Was there a big learning curve for you?
Well, it really wasn't, because we ran what was known as the veer offense.
Okay.
And what that means is you run to a point
Yes.
and you don't deviate.
Yeah.
If the quarterback thinks that there's an opening for you, he'll give you the football. If he doesn't, he'll keep it. Then he goes down the line and he reads that defensive end. If the defensive end collapses onto him, he'll pitch it to the trail running back. And so it was a high precision type of offense, but you don't have to think a whole lot because you just run to a point. And he's either going to give it to that lead back, or he's going to pitch it, or he's going to keep it. So all of those things happen really fast. So I didn't have to learn a lot of maneuverability to play the position of running back in those early days.
So it sounds like the option.
That's exactly right.
The option. Okay.
Yep. They just take out like a wishbone has 3 backs. So for the veer, they just took out that middle guy and create 2 split backs.
Okay. All right. So you started off playing multiple sports. At some point, football became the one you focused on, your love. Mm-hmm. And then you started on defense, transitioned over to offense, and you've become the all-time, was it touchdown leader or was it yardage leader in the CIAA?
Well, when I left college, I was the #1 leading rusher in CIAA history. Okay. And as well as the all-time leading rusher for my alma mater.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So what? So you had a stellar career at Winston-Salem State. Describe being drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. What was that like?
Well, it was surprising because of all the teams that actually evaluated me, they were not one that was on the list. Mm-hmm. But having said that, the Cowboys used a combine of scouts. Mm-hmm. So there could be someone who might have come to Winston-Salem State University that represented 6 or 7 different NFL teams. But they did not personally send someone to evaluate me like Pittsburgh did, like what the Washington Redskins did, or the San Francisco 49ers did. So I was a little bit surprised when they drafted me for that basic reason.
Okay. Now, I was just thinking as you were saying that, I know that in that era, we were just past civil rights, so those your Alabamas, your North Carolinas, Clemsons, those were just getting integrated. So the NFL, they were looking at the CIAA a little more, and the MEAC a little bit more in those days, right? Because there was gradually more access, but still there were quite a few of the top black athletes were still at the HBCUs.
That's exactly right. For the most part, a lot of quality guys that played football in college mm-hmm. were still selecting HBCUs to play their football. I'll give you an example. On my offensive line, during the 4-year period that mm-hmm. I played, there were 6 guys that got drafted into the National Football League. On defense, there were another 3 or 4. So the talent was there because at that time, your Power 5 conferences weren't really going after those quality black student athletes at that time.
Okay. What, and we talked about this briefly before the interview started, what are your thoughts on what's happening now where, well, in this instance, Deion Sanders is the coach at Jackson State. There's a bit of a movement to get those top athletes to go back to the HBCUs. What are your thoughts on that? On what's happening?
Well, I think it's a beautiful thing if he continues to bring about some monumental change in the culture and how black student athletes coming out of high school perceive the HBCU experience. And so as he begins to get more used to that environment, he'll have some things to say about what he thinks it needs to attract those 5-star recruits. And I think he's going to be able to do something that nobody's been able to do before, and I'm uniquely excited to see how he develops in trying to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what was it like playing for the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry? I mean, did you ever envision yourself being a professional football player?
Not at all. My goal was to go to college and receive an education. The only reason I played football is that I needed the money.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to complete my eligibility,
Mm-hmm.
graduate, and then go to graduate school. But when I got to college, I was 6'2", 180. When I left at the end of my senior year, I was 6'2", 240, and ran a 4.5 40. So there was a lot of developing that was going on between my freshman and senior seasons, and thus, having been a very accomplished runner, teams begin to see me playing at the next level. But what was even stranger is that most teams saw me as a fullback, although I never blocked anybody in college. So I had to get drafted as a fullback and learn the position of becoming a blocker so that they could understand that that's something that I could do. But I got drafted because I was a runner.
Okay. And in your career, I'm just thinking about who else in that era, so that your career spanned from
1980 until 1989.
Okay, so you were matching up against LT and
Yes.
Dexter Manley and
That's right.
and those guys, and in some instances Reggie White.
That's right.
And Seth Joyner. Wow.
Yeah.
All I can say is wow.
Yeah, there was some very fierce
Yeah.
defensive players in those days.
And that's just in division, but Ronnie Lott and
Yeah.
Singletary, Mike Singletary, Richard Dent, all those guys.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like playing for Tom Landry?
He was wonderful. He was a strict disciplinarian.
Uh-huh.
He required us to be punctual, be smart,
Mm-hmm.
be diligent,
Mm-hmm.
and be determined. All of those things had to be a part of our thought process. If any of those things were missing, then our stay in Dallas would have been relatively short. So once I understood what he expected out of us,
Mm-hmm.
and me in particular, then it was a lot easier for me to provide the necessary talent to fit the system that he had designed for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any particular stories, or is there one story that stands out to you about interacting with him, or?
Oh yeah, I remember one time against Tampa Bay, we were down by 7 points
Mm-hmm.
with less than a minute to play, and he kept calling these simple out routes. This is like a 5-yard out route.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time it happened, the quarterback barely overthrew me.
Mm-hmm.
The second time he hit me right in the numbers, and I caught the ball and I scrambled 52 yards downfield and scored.
Mm-hmm.
But Coach Landry was very intuitive in that he felt that I could run as far as I could, and if I was going to get knocked out of bounds, we could still have the football and stop the clock. Well, as luck would have it, there were several mistakes made on just that one play. And so he understood that he wanted me to be as productive as I could, and if I scored, that would have been gravy, and I was able to score. And so that was his thought process without having to verbalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just carried out the kinds of things that he wanted me to do in the heat of the moment.
Okay.
And that's how he was. He wanted you as a player to think like he was thinking. once I could figure out what his thought process was, I could actually execute the play a lot more efficiently.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you this, and then we'll move on. As one of his former players, what did you think about how his coaching tenure ended? I know that Jerry Jones bought the team, and he wanted to have a fresh start. But as one of his players, did you just kind of look and say, okay, well, that's kind of how things go, or he should be able to coach as long as he wants to, or?
Well, what's interesting about that is going into that 8 or 9 season, we were in training camp, and he gave us a very foreshadowing speech. And the speech, it could have been entitled, "Anybody Can Be Replaced." Because he started out by saying, you know, guys, nothing's promised to you. He said, anybody in here can be replaced. He said, even I can be replaced. And we all laughed, because we just didn't think that was possible. And so we go into the season, and we ended up being 3-13. And during this period, the previous owner was trying to sell the football team. So he was trying to find a buyer that would take over and allow him to free up some of the difficulties that he was having as a business owner away from football. And once that season was over, there was a buyer that no one in the organization knew about, except the 2 people who were consummating the deal, and that was Bum Bright and Jerry Jones. And so the deal was done before anybody knew anything about it. And so he was allowed to make the coaching change. And that's what happened. But Coach Landry was never under any illusion that he probably wasn't going to survive if the right ownership didn't take over. He was very much aware of it. And so the speech he gave us, we laughed about, sure. But he always knew it was a possibility.
Okay. All right. Well, let's. Well, I know I was going to say this and I forgot, and then I just remembered. You know, the Cowboys, being a Buffalo native, the Cowboys broke our hearts in Super Bowls 20. That was 27-28. Yeah. The Cowboys broke our hearts.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's athletics.
And did it back to back, by the way.
Back to back.
We won't mention
back to
that.
back.
Yeah.
Well, Buffalo's best chance to win the Super Bowl was against the Giants.
That's exactly right.
Super Bowl 25.
That's right.
The Redskins and the Cowboys. And I know the Bills Mafia and the Bills Nation might get upset over this, but we were overmatched against the Redskins and the Cowboys, in my opinion. All right. Well, let's transition over to Newtec Business Solutions and science. And actually, if I